for action on transport. It would start with the Japanese proverb, vision without action is a daydream. Action without vision is a nightmare. For transport, the vision of a better connected North, providing the opportunity that the young people spoke about so eloquently and passionately this morning, that vision for transport is set out in our strategic transport plan, submitted to government in February this year, and in more detail for Northern Powerhouse Rail in the business case also submitted in February this year. If we are serious about rebalancing the UK economy and providing that opportunity, now is the time for action. In the short term, over the next 3 years, we're calling for a pipeline of projects valued at £7 billion to be invested in. We're calling for a full commitment of £39 billion to Northern Powerhouse Rail to be built between 2025 and 2040. And we're also calling for £1 billion to develop and design a long-term pipeline of projects to fully implement the strategic transport plan. Now, our railways in the north were in managed decline for a long period of time. And in spite of that, passenger numbers grew by 200% in the last 20 years. In the next 30 years, Dragons, it is estimated that demand for railway travel will increase to 4 times that level. Now, right now, there's £1 billion worth of investment going into new trains, which will increase capacity. And that's very welcome. But the tracks that those trains run on are not reliable enough. And we must prioritise investment to provide reliable rail services. And that is partly, yes, we are partly pitching for mega projects like Northern Powerhouse Rail, but also we need to lure people out of their cars and onto rail services. We need to make our stations accessible, and we need to enable freight to move on to rail. And on the roads, we must make journey times more predictable. And investing in a series of roads projects to improve that predictability is also key. Alongside that, Dragons, we need to decarbonise. Transport on the roads, we need to adopt electric vehicles quicker than the national government has set out. And we need to have zero diesel on trains. Clean air and opportunity must go hand in hand. So the paragraph in the strategy would end, let's get serious about rebalancing the UK economy. It is possible. And as Dan Jarvis said this morning, we need political will and we need transformational levels of investment. So let's get on and do it, and let's turn the vision into action. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. I think, agree with everything you said. 2 observations I think that I've noticed in this new role, where I've seen sort of TfN moving forward, and also some of the initiatives that Dan, my mayor, has been introducing as well in the region. I think the first point I would make is I'm pleased that the debate is beginning to move away from project-based debate, as in HS2 on its own, project yes or no, to a much more joined-up approach on transportation, as saying we've got an integrated transport strategy, HS2, and there are many other aspects of it, are just parts of that. I think that's somewhere we need to go, and I hope very much that we will extend that discussion. I can see that the beginnings of that happening as well, to rather than just transport, to mobility overall. That's where I come from. But not trains, I come from cars, so that's why I like Ruth's presentation so much. It's about the whole aspect of mobility, and it's about intelligent mobility, it's about clean mobility, and it's not just about trains and cars, or trains, cars and planes. It's about walking, it's about cycling, it's about movement. and free movement. And I think so. I like that the aspect of kind of where we're heading. The other point I'd just like to make is that at the breakfast meeting I attended this morning, we, I believe, need to kind of move the transport agenda to encompass also an infrastructural agenda, because there are interdependencies. Henry, we were talking about this earlier this morning. There are interdependencies in terms of connectivity, online connectivity, cable connectivity. If you want to have driverless cars, which are not far away, by the way, then you have to have the bandwidth, the cable laying to hold and serve all the sensors that you will need on the roads. The best way to do that is to lay those cables along tram lines, along new tram lines, along new tracks, just by way of example. So I sense that there is the Transport for the North agenda is beginning to drive us to more joined-up thinking, and I'm hoping, and I'm very expectant, and I hope you are all too, that will encompass a much more robust, much more holistic and broad strategy for the North that looks at how do we fix connectivity in the North. Connectivity in the North is not about connectivity necessarily with London. It's about connectivity in the North. And so starting some of these projects and looking at some of these projects in terms of start up here, don't start in London and work your way progressively up the track to eventually get to us in 2040. We need to make these changes now. And I'm really grateful for all the work that you're doing in TFN. Thank you. Right. Well, I hope it resonates with the crowd. So, okay. So the next one is that the North has, as we all talked about the little girl in the red coat, we aren't talking about that anymore. We are talking about an unparalleled set of natural assets, vibrant urban areas and wonderful rural locations. And yet for many of our communities, they're not connected physically, culturally or socially to any of these great opportunities. And some of those communities don't share any benefits in those great assets as well. So on that basis, I'd like to introduce our fourth speaker, who is chair of the Wentworth Woodhouse Preservation Trust, Dame Julie Kenny, CBE, to tell us in her few paragraphs what the Northern Powerhouse strategy should be for our places, our natural assets.
Thank you. Jenny. Good morning, all. I'm Julie Kenny, and I'm proud to be from Rotherham. We should all be proud of where we live, how it shapes us, and how we shape it. I made my business in Rotherham, and I want others to invest here and to become part of this place. We all want this, not just for Rotherham, but for all of the North. The North is 1,000 places and one place. We must nurture it just as it nurtures us. I want us to promote a form of placemaking that is not just about public space, but about using funding and influence to create places which promote well-being for all, that are attractive, vibrant, prosperous and friendly. The North must become the #1 destination for investors and visitors. If you can live anywhere, you should want to live here. Our places, our landscapes, our art and heritage are fantastic and unique assets, iconic of the North. Northern culture has helped shape the world. We are blessed with World Heritage Sites, national parks, museums and galleries, renowned festivals and world-famous sport. But are they working hard enough for us? Last year, overseas tourists brought 680 million to the North, but that's only 8% of total spend in England. The visitor economy can deliver more. And, as well as our national treasures, we should recognise the value of all of our places and recognise that our cultural infrastructure sustains them, just as our digital and transport infrastructure connects them. Cultural assets create places that help individuals flourish and bring communities together, and yet they have seen years of underinvestment. There are still too many places in the north where people struggle to access culture, and we have more than our fair share of social challenges. But there are many opportunities. 1 million people have used Chester's Story House since it opened a year ago. 5 million people have visited Peace Hall in its first 2 years. Investments like these and others show the potential for arts, culture and heritage to transform places, driving business confidence, civic pride and regeneration. Through strategic investment, we can exploit the full potential of culture, which can revive our town centres and enrich lives. The government's investment in High Street is a great opportunity to collaborate on placemaking. There are opportunities in our amazing rural landscape too. Changes to how we manage our countryside and fund farming can provide flood risk and climate change benefits, as well as boosting access and recreation to improve well-being. Cultural leaders are committed to a successful North and want to play their part. They have the energy and ideas to make our places thrive. We need to build partnerships to put culture at the heart of placemaking. We should do this locally and across the North, collaborating to broaden and align our collective offer, making every pound go as far as possible. We must use all of our assets to secure prosperity and well-being for the people of the North. We have great people, great businesses and great places. Places that with collaboration and investment can become the greatest places, creating better life chances for everyone. That is why we must include placemaking in our Northern Powerhouse strategy. We need better evidence of the value for place-based investment. We believe that successful placemaking can create the confidence and rich medium to grow the North and help rebalance the UK's economy. We propose, Dragons, a Northern Powerhouse Place Fund, giving people in the North a role in coordinating their investment, maximising the North's global brand and boosting the competitiveness of our place, our North. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. David, your thoughts on that?
Julie, thank you very much for that great pitch. Wow. That's what I want to say first. And fellow Dragons, I want to be the first in there investing in this. Oh. It's an incredibly exciting opportunity that we have here in place. High quality places ultimately mean that they have a really positive impact on economic performance. And I think that we need both successful but very distinctive places. And placemaking is absolutely essential because we've got so many huge assets to exploit across our wonderful north of England. We've got incredible heritage. We've got national parks galore, brilliant coastlines, abundant arts and culture, countryside, and I'm not being biased in this, which is unparalleled in the UK, and towns and cities of such standing that we need to capitalise on this. But all this really needs to be harvested to deliver those distinctive places, to bring growth and to bring greater benefits to all our communities. So we need to scope out this opportunity very, very carefully and the strategic approach therein and get on with building these distinctive places across the north to improve and build confidence, which is important, and the conditions to boost productivity and improve our well-being. Now, I built my businesses, and I'm proud of the fact, in Beedale in North Yorkshire and in Goole in Humberside. And to me, they in their own way are distinctive places. What I want to see is the whole of the north be covered by distinctive places, because that is how we all get really positive economic growth and a feeling within our communities that is really positive and confident.
Thank you, David. Right, the last one. That's really good. I think it's great as well. We ought to do something about that and get Jenny over and show us how to make it happen. our last theme is trade. It was interesting to listen to Ruth's presentation on McLaren and how 90% of McLaren's business is export. I compare that, Ruth, to my and Dan's region, where around 20% of the GVA is export only. It's a huge need to, we may say we're open for business, but are we really? And are we really open for business as the North? Something I've maybe controversially throw in here is MIPIM, for example. We haven't yet got ourselves together in terms of representing ourselves internationally as the North. Something maybe not everybody agrees with, but I think it's an agenda item on our board, just by way of example. So on that theme, I'm going to invite Tim Newens, who's CEO of Midas, Tim, to pitch. And you're pitching to Asif, who has long and broad credentials in the export field. So I hope you can convince him. And I need a solution.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Asif. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually a late substitute for Emma Sheldon, so I hope I do her justice in this pitch. But as was mentioned, I'm Chief Executive of the Inward Investment Agency for Greater Manchester. So what I'm here to pitch for is increased capacity in a new way, really, for trade and investment across the North. We've heard a lot already about how the North has historically played a major role in global trade and how we see this as critical to our future. But we also know that in order to achieve the ambitions of growth that we want to see, we need to make a step change in our international trade and investment performance. This is as much a factor in the North's success as it is to increase and improve our skills and our transport, because all these factors are interdependent. The Northern Economic Independent Review clearly established the scale of the economic opportunity that exists for us. The review set out that we have the potential to increase our economy by 100 billion GVA and 850,000 jobs by 2050, relative to a business-as-usual scenario. That's a 30% increase. And trade and investment will play a huge role in achieving its full potential. At the moment, though, only 7.5% of the businesses in the North export, compared to 9.5% nationally. That's 24% of GDP comes from exporting in the North, compared to 30% nationally. And UK government has a target of taking that national average up to 35%. So that seems quite far away for the North at the moment. Just by reaching the national average in GDP terms, we can add an extra 50 to 60 billion to the Northern economy. So the size of the prize is enormous. For inward investment, the North generates around 90 jobs per 100,000 population. Again, around half the UK figure. By matching the UK average, we could deliver an extra 30,000 jobs per year in the North. There are other factors to look at, aside from just volume, though. Value, the quality of these jobs is also important in order to make sure that we have the opportunities for our people going forward. There's also an interconnectedness between investment and trade as well. Many of our foreign investors are some of our biggest exporters that invest here to use the UK as an international launchpad into other markets. Clearly, any of this investment that we're talking about here also has to be net additional growth. This can't be about displacing growth across the UK. But what we know, particularly from foreign-owned firms or firms that are international in their outlook, is that they spend more on people, they give higher salaries, they employ more people, they spend more on R&D, and they have a higher use of technology as well, which spills over into our indigenous businesses. So the impact of investment, either by international businesses or our own internationalisation, is significant. The work done recently by Steer Economics has shown us that we need a different approach to trade and investment in the North in order to enable step change. And of course, this can't be an at-any-cost approach either. We appreciate that. But there needs to be a balance between attracting and embedding foreign investors, but also supporting our indigenous firms to export more as well. The role of securing trade and investment does not rest with one institution. Both national, local, public and private sector partners all play key roles. We see that. And some of this activity will be done overseas, some of this activity will have to be done nationally. And of course, while we appreciate that we have local delivery as well, indeed we have a lot of friendly local rivalry across the north, we know that by cooperating we can improve both the product that we have in the north and attract further investment. It's clear also that in some markets, the Northern Powerhouse proposition is more powerful potentially than our individual propositions. Markets like China, the scale of the north really makes a difference. Whereas in other markets, we know that our other brands, our city brands, potentially our corporate brands, hold greater sway. However, the most important objective overall is to seize the economic opportunity. And with Brexit around the corner, more than ever, we need to internationalise to provide the much-needed growth and resilience to our economy. And the role of trade and investment in that process is paramount. So to sum up, in order to realise the opportunities that I've just outlined, we need to work differently together between government, the north, public, private and academic sectors to realise the opportunity. And this must be led by the north. We need to look long-term rather than be governed by short-term targets and easy wins. And finally, we need to capitalise on the strengths that we've identified for the north, focusing on our prime capabilities in sectors such as advanced manufacturing, energy, health innovation and digital. And we know that we can build compelling propositions around these capabilities to drive trade and investment. With these core factors in mind, by increasing capacity and having a new way, we can make sure that the north is part of the next cycle of ideas-led, sustainable global growth, rather than being left behind by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Asif, your observations, please.
Thanks very much, Tim. When you talk about trade and you talk about international trade and you talk about investment, you talk about every single thing we've heard here today. And just to pick on the transport, first of all, I think we've got to accelerate transport. We've got a long-term vision. We need to have a shorter-term vision as well. I think getting people back onto the roads, getting people out of cars and getting people using, we've got to have a shorter-term vision as well. And I think it's far too stretched. For individuals and people out there, they need to see something shorter-term, I think. And just onto the trade side of it, I think when you talk about international trade and you talk about us joining together, there is a lot of competition between cities based in this room here. But that should carry on because that's a competitive edge. Sometimes you've got to have that. I think when you go on an international trade and you look at some of the places, you look at China, you go to Shanghai, 29.5 million population in Shanghai, or probably more now since the last count. And you sit there and you look, and we go to cities where our population may be 4, 5, 6 million. We're a pinnacle there. So we have to collaborate. I think everything about today's collaboration is about coming together, taking our assets. But actually, we need to ask ourselves some questions here. So since our last convention, and we look at international trade, as James quite rightly mentioned, you know, we've got MIPIN, we've got some other things going on. Have we actually come together and said, we're actually doing this jointly as a North? No, we haven't. And if we have, we've not done the actions to get it started. So when you talk about international trade and you talk about what the rest of the world look at us, the rest of the world look outside and look at different cities. And we have got some great assets. And I think we need to bring them together. We need to bring the culture, the people, the place, the technology, the innovation. We have got so many great things to do. But we're all doing them in silo. And I think that is part of the issue. When you look at trade and you look at investment and you look at it from a business perspective, we've got to pick up some great stories, the news stories of McLaren. We've got to put that out there in a big signpost and say, internationally, guys, you know, throughout the world, we've got, this is what McLaren did. This is a news story. We have to bring down and bring together through all our cities in the north and all our towns in the north, our great cultural assets, our great people assets, our great business assets, bundle them together and come up with a great news story. You heard it earlier today from the young people who came up and stood up here and presented. We've got to create the right future, and without the right international trade, without the right investment, we're not going to have jobs. We're going to live with reality. We're not going to have jobs. We're not going to have economic prosperity, and they're not going to have a future. So we need to come together with some of this stuff. We need to bring all the leaders together politically. We need to bring all the business people together, or the great leaders in business, the innovation, the people who are innovating, changing stuff. Bring it all together under one roof and have one clear message. So when we go out there on an international trade, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Asif. So we're going to draw this very sort of hectic session to an end. Just before I do, if you don't mind, guys, I'll just want to summarise with one or two sentences. I think the themes, thank you, pitchers, presenters, for your thoughts. And I thought you did really well in compressing something and getting a message across very clearly in 4 minutes each. So in German we'd say Hut ab, take my hat off to you for doing that, and also for the contribution from my fellow dragons. But in summary, lots of different ideas and so on, but there are some themes. One is themes that are coming out of this session, I think, similar to the ones, to the voices and communications that we received earlier on today as well, which is unity in the North is very important. So we have to speak with one voice. I think that's a real call for action. I think you've picked it all out individually. And collaboration. We have to collaborate. That's collaborate across sectors, collaborate across places, collaborate across disciplines, collaborate across interests, and so on. And I kind of detect as well, especially from the earlier presentations from our young people, from you, Jenny, as well, about the North wants skin in the game. But within the North, we must ensure that our people, and not just us, the business people or the leaders, but a different form of skin in the game takes place that involves and includes different ages, different areas, different places, different interest groups as well. And hopefully to develop a strategy which is inclusive, that everybody can identify with and say, I had a piece in that, or I have an interest in that, and I can have an influence in that. And I think that that's where we're heading. So thank you very much for your attention, for your patience with us, for this hectic romp through strategy development. And over to you, Steph.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. Thank you very much. Thanks again to our pitchers. Not easy to suddenly get up in front of 1,000 people with a load of cameras pointing at you as well. So can we just put our hands together again for the pitchers this morning? So we're just going to do a bit of choreography on the stage, get the chairs off, ready for our next speakers, who I'm sure you've probably guessed by all the cameras. You've probably guessed who's coming up next. I'm just going to, as well, just thank everybody for all the comments that are coming up on Slido. Thank you very much for those. Again, really helpful to get your feedback on everything that's been said. That will be incorporated into some of the sessions you'll be going to this afternoon. There will be lunch after the next speeches. And that's when you will go into your policy breakout sessions after lunch. There's a tour at lunchtime as well. You'll be able to go on the big melt steel furnace demo if you're not in one of the policy sessions. If you don't know which session you're in, because you signed up, I don't know, maybe after you'd had a few drinks, it's on your badge. So if you have a look at your badge, that will be able to tell you which session you're in. If you're still, I don't know, you can't read, I don't know, just ask somebody and they will be able to tell you which session you're in as well. I mean, ask someone who works here, not just the person sat next to you, because they probably don't know. So you'll be heading off to those sessions shortly after lunch. You will get a full hour for lunch, because I know there's various things going on during that. So there will be plenty of opportunity to make sure you've got a decent break, because I am aware we're a little bit behind schedule. But hey, hasn't it been good hearing from all of these different voices? I know there's a lot of love for the young people who are on this morning, and all of those voices of the convention we heard from. So fantastic to hear the passion coming from them, and this idea about the opportunities and them being part of creating the future. So now, without further ado, let me introduce our next two speakers. We're going to hear from the Right Honourable Jake Berry MP, Minister for the Northern Powerhouse, who, as you have guessed probably from all the cameras that are here, has also brought with him the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. So put your hands together, first of all, for Jake Berry.
In 5 years, the Northern Powerhouse has gone from a slogan to a conference with over 1,000 people attending it and a seat at the cabinet table. We've been devolving powers to our regions, upgrading our transport infrastructure and investing in local areas. But most importantly, we're backing our innovators, our job creators, our entrepreneurs and our risk takers. They are the wealth creators. They are the people who make the public investment possible. And today, we're going to support them even further by renewing our promise to level up all of our regions. When Boris came to Manchester, he reminded us of some of the essential ingredients for success. For places truly to thrive, they need that essential combination of power, responsibility, and accountability. Now, our Prime Minister knows that better than anyone else, because for 8 years he was Mayor of London. He used those powers to create the fastest growing city in the world. He knows, just as we know in this room, that when you give towns and cities more control over their destinies, they will do great things. So already, we've signed multi-billion-pound devolution deals across the Northern Powerhouse. What's the result? We now have more people in the north of England represented by an elected mayor than anywhere else in the country. It's half of us. 50% of Northerners have a mayor. These mayors, and we've got many of them in the room today, have a war chest of powers, resources, and money, derived straight from Downing Street to their street. They are the people leading the way. They are the people who are getting things done. In my home city of Liverpool, Steve Rotherham is using £172 million of Transforming Cities Fund to improve the creaking Merseyrail infrastructure. And in the Tees Valley, Ben Houchen has established the first mayoral development corporation outside London. That covers a mammoth 4,000-acre brownfield site. And he's even found time to make the Tees fly again by buying his own airport. So you can see for yourself, if we give local people power, responsibility, and accountability, it's what pays the dividend. Today in the North, we have a record number of people in work. We have record low unemployment. And we have wages outstripping inflation. Ladies and gentlemen, together, we have created that Northern jobs revolution. But we also know there's no point creating any of these jobs if we don't have a mobile workforce. That's why, as a government, we've invested £13 billion in Northern transport infrastructure. No other government in history has come even close to matching this figure. So let's look at what we've achieved. On the East Coast Main Line, new trains built in County Durham. On the Transpennine route, new trains. On our Northern route, new trains. On the Tyne and Wear Metro, new trains. But the most important thing of all is that with Northern Powerhouse Rail, we will harness the Northern Powerhouse north, east, and west. Now, our Prime Minister has been clear. As the Mayor of London, he delivered Crossrail for people who lived in the City of London. Now, as our Prime Minister, he set out his determination to deliver Northern Powerhouse Rail for all the peoples of the North. So today, as we renew our promise to the Northern Powerhouse, it's time for us to be bolder than we have ever been before. Because leaving the European Union on the 31st of October is our moment. It's the opportunity to reshape our United Kingdom. We can ensure that the North, as the workshop of England, is at the heart of delivering a global exporting Britain. I'm not going to say much more because I know you want to hear from our next speaker. But I'll finish with this. The Prime Minister's presence here today at our conference with over 1,000 attendees shows that he is taking personal responsibility for driving the Northern Powerhouse. The Northern Powerhouse is absolutely at the heart of everything this government wants to achieve. But it is only by working together that we can make the progress for the next 5 years that we have seen already. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the Right Honourable Boris Johnson, MP.
Thank you very much, Jake. Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here in Rotherham, in the Magna Centre, which is, of course, the plural of magnum, which, as everybody knows, is the Latin for ice cream. And great to be at the biggest ever convention of the North. Only right that we're meeting here on the banks of the Don, literally in the crucible that forged the history of this nation and indeed of the modern world, when Nelson defeated the French at Trafalgar and set this country on course for about 100 years of imperial expansion. The cannons of HMS Victory were forged here at Walker & Company. It was Rotherham pipes that brought fresh drinking water to Hong Kong, Rotherham steel that clad Brunel's Great Eastern and formed the skeletons of New York skyscrapers. And did you know that every fire hydrant in New York was cast in British steel less than 2 miles from here at the works of Guest and Crimes? And that was before anybody in America thought to put tariffs on British steel. This place where we meet was in fact so central to our national life that it was bombed in both the First and the Second World Wars. And so it's entirely fitting that 50 years ago, the works here at Templeborough adopted as its logo the phoenix, perpetually rising from the ashes. And across this region, you can feel that phoenix-like transformation as the Northern Powerhouse, which Jake just spoke so eloquently, thrums into life with a low-carbon, fuel-efficient roar. Look at Catcliffe, where a factory that once made superb glass is now being used to used by McLaren to turn super light, super strong Yorkshire carbon fibre into the fastest production cars on Earth. Right next door, at the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, Xeros Technology are producing the world's most environmentally friendly washing machine. That's the spin, and I bet it's true. Boeing chose Sheffield as its first civil aerospace factory in Europe, with nearly half its apprentices taken on, half its employees taken on as apprentices. And did anybody have a bagel this morning? Did you? No? Well, if you did, it was probably made just up the road in Mexborough, where the largest bagel factory in Europe produces fully 3/4 of the bagels eaten in Britain every day. Sheffield is the home of the UK's largest provider of hybrid and electric vehicle drive systems, a company called Magtech, a world-first initiative. Magtech is retrofitting Sheffield's refuse lorries with battery power with enough juice to negotiate the Seven Hills and recharge themselves with energy they generate from the very rubbish they collect. Rubbish-powered rubbish vans. There's a joke there somewhere, which I'm going to leave it to you to work out. I tell you, there is no limit to the imagination, innovation, and ingenuity of the leadership in the North. And I have a profound belief that talent and genius are uniformly distributed around the UK, but opportunity is not. And that is why we need to level up across our amazing country. And we need investment in education, the giant precondition that determines whether you have the freedom and confidence to make the most of your talent. So this government will give every child the world-class education they deserve. We're levelling up across the country, investing an extra 14 billion over 3 years and increasing the minimum level of funding for every pupil in primary and secondary schools. We're backing the teachers who change our lives. We're putting up salaries for new teachers, funding pension increases, and giving teachers the backing they need to deal with disruptive pupils. We cannot afford any longer the chronic underfunding of our brilliant FE colleges, which do so much to support young people's skills and our economy. And I think it's absurd that employers have been driven to import so much skilled labour from abroad, in large part because of the vocational failures of vocational training in our own country. We have a world-class universities sector. We should be very, very, very proud of it. But it's time we aspired to the same status for our further education institutions, to give everyone the opportunity to express their talents. And of course, education is not enough on its own. You need to be able to connect with other people, to get that job interview, to find that customer. And so we in this new government are supporting gigabit broadband, which is a lot, I understand, gigabit broadband for every home by 2025, 8 years earlier than previously promised. And they can do it in Spain. If they can do it in Spain, why can't we do it in the UK? We have a new, stronger town fund, £3.6 billion stronger town fund, so that local people can invest in libraries, parks, youth clubs, areas, places to bring people together. And that kind of intervention cannot be directed by central government. So let's be frank about what we're trying to do. What is needed most of all, in addition to the technology, the infrastructure that we're supplying, the education that we're supplying, it's of course local leadership, trusting people to take back control and run things in the way that they want to. Because, of course, central government cannot abdicate responsibility, but only local champions can really make the difference for their towns and their communities. I'm the first Prime Minister since Clement Attlee to have been a mayor. And I think I'm right in saying that. And I know the transformative potential of local accountable leadership. Someone with the power to sort out what matters most to local people.
Like our MPs, Boris.
Yes,
indeed.
Indeed. Yeah. Yes, I'm all in favour of our MPs.
Yeah, why are you not with them in Parliament?
Would you?
Out the mess that you have created.
Would you mind? I'm very happy to get back to Parliament very soon. But what we want, I think, to see in this what we want to see in this region is towns and communities able to represent that gentleman and sort out his needs, and whether it's transport to get to work or good housing or whatever it happens to be, and somebody to drive big infrastructure projects, to boost investment, to wave the flag for the area, to act as a local champion and say, come and invest here. But of course, along with that power comes responsibility and accountability. And it's time we gave more people a say over the places where they live. We're going to do devolution properly. We're going to maximise the power of the North with more mayors across the whole of the North. And I know there's a real enthusiasm for devolution in Yorkshire, and I welcome the establishment of a Yorkshire committee as a practical step for facilitating greater collaboration on a Yorkshire-wide basis. In the meantime, we are committed to getting the Sheffield City region done, and I also want to open up negotiations with Leeds and West Yorkshire so we can make a mayor work there too, whatever the nature of any longer-term arrangements in Yorkshire. But I also want to build on the fantastic job so many mayors are already doing and ensure you can deliver on ambitious commitments to your communities. And that will mean levelling up powers for existing mayors. And to make sure our great Northern Powerhouse is firing on all its cylinders, to champion investment and opportunity, we are going to work with leaders across the North, the mayors, local businesses and others, to create a new, stronger Northern Powerhouse growth body. It will be a genuine partnership across the region, led by a Northerner chosen in close consultation with you. Led by, I imagine, there's a process to work out who's going to do it, but anyway, it's going to be done in close consultation with you. But if there is one field that can change people's lives for the better, one field of policy, and level up opportunity, one field of policy that, in my view, must now be devolved, that policy is transport. Nearly 200 years ago, this country invented a machine that went on to unite great services of great areas of Great Britain. It spread its iron web across the earth and it transformed everywhere it touched. The north of England gave the world the railway. And at a time when the rest of the human race could travel no faster than a galloping horse, 40,000 people watched as Locomotion 1 puffed its way like some fire-breathing beast along the tracks between Stockton and Darlington in 1825. It was ours, a world first, the common ancestor of both the McLaren and the rubbish-eating dustcart I just described. And yet, 2 centuries later, in this birthplace of the railways, we can do so much better. Today, coming from London on the train, it took me just over an hour and a half to get to Doncaster. But if, for example, you travelled from Liverpool to Rotherham, less than half the distance, you might have had to leave an hour earlier than me and change as many as 3 times. Your journey may have been on 2- and 3-carriage trains, some of them built in the early 1980s with a body designed for a bus and maybe bus seats too. I love buses, but not when they're supposed to be trains. When I was in Yorkshire last week, I reaffirmed my commitment to Northern Powerhouse Rail, and I eagerly await your plans. And before we get on with a project of that scale, I deeply believe in the absolute importance of everyday, ordinary transport that people rely on. There are some terrific local transport services in the north, from Manchester's trams and Merseyrail, the most punctual railway in Britain, to the Tyne and Wear Metro. And there has been some very significant government investment, with 2,000 additional services now operating each week, 500 million on new trains, 100 million on the refurbishment of the rest, including Wi-Fi and power sockets, and as well as the electrification of the railways in the northwest. And the pacers will be gone within months. But the overall picture is still patchy. All too often, Northern England has to put up with old diesel trains running once or twice an hour from stations where the only form of welcome is on the platform is, yes, a bus shelter. William Wordsworth campaigned furiously against the railway coming to the Lake District. Last year, during the timetable meltdown, Northern and Network Rail gave him his wish. And what is the difference between those, the superb services I've described, like Merseyrail, Tyne and Wear Metro, the Manchester Metro link, and the ones that let you down far too often? Well, partly the answer is money, but the other difference is what? Accountability. The right answer from the mayors in the front. Each of those well-run services is run by or on behalf of locally elected politicians, and they are always going to care more about their trains and trams than someone in Whitehall. London was just the same. Before 2000, when London Transport was run by central government, the tube was frankly shabby and neglected. But when my predecessor and I ran it as London Mayor, services improved, though I can't speak for the current incumbent. So today, I'm announcing my intention to give the railways of the North back to the people of the North, back to the places where they were born, back to Stockton and to Darlington, back to Liverpool and Manchester. In the combined authority or joint transport committee areas in the North East, West Yorkshire, Sheffield City region, Greater Manchester, Liverpool City region, it's time for the North to run its own trains. Keith Williams, who's leading a review of the railways for us, has, I think, been in touch with most of the people concerned. On local lines in metropolitan areas, we will give greater control over fares, service patterns, rolling stock and stations. And outside the combined authority areas, I want communities to take control too. That might be through county councils taking on similar roles in their areas for stations or branch lines, or it might be by transferring local branch line and rural services to community rail partnerships owned by local people. And, as you have asked, we will give you far greater control over your budgets. But as well as taking power, this is the kicker, you have to take responsibility. That means alongside taking the credit, you'll be taking the heat, just like a mayor has to in London. Nobody blames the government for the problems of the Central Line, they blame the mayor of London. Now, we will be generous on capital spending, but we won't be able to afford everything everyone wants. So choices will have to be made. And if you people want more than they can afford, then they will have to raise the money themselves. And of course, the North's railways must still be part of the national network, which passengers tell us that they want, with many trains obviously running across the boundaries of the region. So there has to be still a role for the centre. This will be a partnership between the railways and the leaders of the North. And I think it's a formula that can work and that will deliver better services for the people of this country. And that is how we do it. That's how we level up and unleash the talent of the whole country. Better education, gigabit broadband, sprouting in every home, reliable, comfortable and affordable transport with someone accountable delivering your service. These are the pumping pistons that will drive the Northern Powerhouse, and that Northern Powerhouse is turning before our eyes into a new locomotive for the UK economy. 2 centuries ago, this region literally became the engine that propelled the world to new discoveries and new horizons, bringing people together, bringing countries together, and bringing new opportunities for everyone. That is what the Northern Powerhouse can achieve in the 21st century, and this is a government that will back you to deliver it. Thank you very much.
So, Prime Minister, I think you are going to take some questions, and I am going to introduce some questioners from the floor. First of all, from BBC Look North, is James Vincent ready with his question, please?
Thank you very much. Welcome to Yorkshire again, Prime Minister.
Thank you, sir.
You've been up here a few times already, telling us that you'll do Northern Powerhouse Rail, telling us that you'll give us more police officers, and now telling us you'll give us more power to do great things in the North. But can you do any of that? Because you can't get an election. This sounds like election promises and an election tour. And you can't get an election and you can't get Brexit done at the moment. How are you going to achieve that?
Well, we are going to... I certainly won't be deterred by anybody from our goal of coming out of the EU on October the 31st, which is, I think, what the people of this country want us to do, and they want us to get Brexit done. I believe they do. But I also won't be deterred from getting on with our domestic agenda. And I think the people of this country also want to hear, yes, it is absolutely true that the opposition parties don't particularly want to have an election, nor do they want to deliver Brexit, and I have to face that reality at the present. But what people want is to hear how we're going to get on and deliver on their priorities. And that is what we're going to do. So I think it is entirely relevant to come not just to the north, but to all parts of the country and say how we're going to deliver 20,000 more police on the streets and what we are doing to invest in our hospitals. And yes, I'm a passionate believer in devolution and in giving power to strong local leaders to champion their areas and to be accountable for their transport networks, because that, I think, will produce better results for the people of this country. So whatever the shenanigans that may be going on at Westminster, we will get on with delivering our agenda and preparing to take this country out of the EU on October the 31st. And there will be ample time for Parliament to consider the deal that I very much hope to do at the EU summit on October the 17th and 18th. And there will be ample time, as the gentleman, I think, was the gentleman who was who left prematurely, not necessarily under his own steam. That is the answer to his question. We've lost in this. But to have a Queen's speech and to set out our domestic agenda, I don't think people realise we've lost about 4 days of parliamentary sitting time. There is ample time for Parliament to consider not just Brexit, but all kinds of things, both before and after the European Council on October the 17th. So let's get on and do it.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I think we're going to hear from Joe Pike from ITV Yorkshire now.
Thank you. Prime Minister, if you really do believe that domestic abuse shatters lives, why have you delayed the domestic abuse bill by not carrying it over when Parliament prorogued? And can you promise the campaigner Claire Throssell, who's fought so hard on this, that the same bill that she fought for, you will bring in front of Parliament?
Yes, I can. I mean, the bill, so thank you. The bill is going, I think I said yesterday or possibly the day before, that the bill is certainly going to be carried over, that the domestic abuse bill will be right there in the Queen's speech, along with many other measures.
Thank you. David Parker, the Rotherham Advertiser.
Welcome to Rotherham, Prime Minister. A few months ago, you said in a radio interview that lots of local police forces were spaffing money up the wall. Is that something you still believe on investigations of historic CSE?
Well, that's actually not what I said, but what I certainly can say is I think all such investigations certainly here are extremely important. And but the point I was making is that we do need to be backing our police to be fighting crime, and that's why we're investing in 20,000 police out on the streets and putting about $1 billion more into policing. And just for ease of reference, I noticed a sort of ripple of support for the idea of staying in the EU beyond October the 31st. Just to remind you, folks, in case you really think that's a good idea, it involves spending another £1 billion a month of taxpayers' money to stay in the EU. I frankly rather spend £1 billion of taxpayers' money on putting 20,000 police officers on the streets. That's my judgment. Anyway, if the opposition have a different view, why don't they put it to the people? That's
David Walsh, I think, from the Sheffield Star.
Welcome, Prime Minister. Sheffield business and arts leaders have today launched a culture collective to improve the city's cultural offer and help grow the economy. It's in the Sheffield Star. They agree Sheffield has been underfunded compared to comparable cities. Is it something you will support with funding?
Well, I've just put 3.6 billion into a towns fund. which I don't think necessarily Sheffield can't qualifies for. But I'm just to say that we're spending huge sums today, and I don't want to make another spending commitment at the moment. But I will certainly happily study the request that has been made. If there is any way that we can support the cultural initiative in Sheffield that you describe, then I will certainly make sure that we do. But I'm reluctant to make more extempore spending commitments from this platform.
The Yorkshire Post, Geraldine Scott.
Prime Minister, you spoke about devolution deals in Leeds and West Yorkshire. The people of the North have waited for a long time. So when do you think this is going to happen? And is it going to lead for a deal for the whole of Yorkshire?
Well, we will get on as fast as possible. And whether it leads to a deal for the whole of Yorkshire or not, I mean, that is very much a matter for consultation and decision by local people. I know that there are different views. And I've been speedily acquainted of those different views and the strength of feeling which is held on either side. And I think it therefore right that local people should consult and decide on that matter for themselves. There are clearly different areas that could elect a mayor, and I think that there needs to be further work done on that precise geographical division.
Manchester Evening News, Jennifer Williams.
Prime Minister, you mentioned the Stronger Towns Fund in your speech. I've done a bit of analysis looking at which towns have received money from that, and most of them are marginal seats that the Conservatives either need to win from Labour or need to defend from the Liberal Democrats, including some of the most marginal seats in the country. Well, are you trying to buy votes using that fund?
Look, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be at all surprised if the Conservatives were in contention in every seat in the country. I can't be remotely surprised that some of the towns in question might shortly have a Conservative MP. If you'll kindly furnish me with the analysis that you've done, I'll be happy to answer you. But what we want are stronger towns across the UK. We want to use the cash to help people, local people, wherever they are, to level up and to invest in wonderful things for their communities, to improve public amenities, to help to put in broadband, and to bring life to their communities. That's what we want to do, and I think it's a great thing for every town in the country. And I'm not aware of any political bias involved in I'm genuinely not aware of any political bias involved in the dispersing of those funds, and it sounds like pure cynicism to suggest otherwise. Seriously, I mean.
Kevin Larkin, BBC Radio Leeds.
Prime Minister, you've already committed to Northern Powerhouse Rail. You've made another announcement this afternoon about our local rail services. When you launched your leadership campaign, you said it was madness. Leeds doesn't have a mass transit system. Will you commit to it today? And if so, when can we get the details?
God. Well, it may well be that I was exactly right in what I said about Leeds, and I think it is right. But as I said in answer to the question about arts funding in Sheffield, I want to do it. And I certainly think that it is important that a great city like Leeds should have a mass transit system. But I'm not going to commit today to a budget for it. What I think I could commit to doing, because it's a really good question, is to going back to talk to Grant Shapps and our transport team and our railways team and to see what's cooking and what we could do to support. Because it is in my view, it leads by comparison by most other European cities is not well provided for with mass transit, and we need to be doing something about it.
And finally, Prime Minister Paul Brand from ITV.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister.
Good afternoon, Paul.
You've got 5 weeks left to get a Brexit deal. Can you update us on what you think is the latest probability of finding an agreement that the DUP can get behind? And secondly, you called David Cameron a girly swat. Are you a little bit worried what he might call you in his upcoming memoir?
Well, Paul. First of all, on where we are with Brexit. I think people do deserve to know what's going on. We're working incredibly hard to get a deal. There is the rough shape of a deal to be done. As some of you may have seen, I've myself been to talk to various other EU leaders, particularly in Germany, in France, and in Ireland, where we made a good deal of progress. I'm seeing President of the Commission and the Chief Negotiator, Michel Barnier, on Monday, and we'll talk about the ideas that we've been working on, and we'll see where we get. I mean, I would say I'm cautiously optimistic. How is that a good enough characterization, Paul, of where we are? I'm cautiously optimistic. And on your second question, which was about, but whatever happens, we'll come out on October the 31st. Your second question about David Cameron. Well, look, I mean, absolutely nothing. I want people to be clear. Absolutely nothing that David Cameron says in his memoirs in the course of the next few days will diminish the affection and respect in which I hold him. Not least for what he did in turning this country round after Labour left it bankrupt, by the way, and delivering a jobs miracle in the UK with record low unemployment. I think he has a very distinguished record and a legacy to be proud of. That's what I think.
Thank you.
Well, it's true. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much there to our Northern Powerhouse Minister and the Prime Minister there. Can you just put your hands together to say a thanks to them? I'd just like to point out I am a girly swat and I'm proud of it. Let's see who's in their job the longest. Right. So